Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about the new movie, Nosferatu. If you end up enjoying this video, please consider liking and subscribing. That way I don't get seduced by some really old and ugly vampire. Nosferatu is directed by Robert Eggers, who's responsible for the critically acclaimed films The Northman, The Witch, and The Lighthouse. The synopsis is as follows. In the 1830s, estate agent Thomas Hutter travels to Transylvania for a fateful meeting with Count Orlok, a prospective client. In his absence, Hutter's new bride, Ellen, is left under the care of their friends Friedrich and Anna Harding. Ellen soon encounters an evil force that's far beyond her control. So without further ado, let's get into the 6 things that make a movie great. 1. The plot. This movie centers around the character of Ellen, who just recently married her husband Thomas. But Thomas is looking for his big break as an estate agent, and so he decides to take a business trip all the way to Transylvania. And as the story continues, you find the distinct connection between Count Orlov, Thomas, Ellen, and all the horrors that follow. And I gotta say, the plot of this movie was absolutely fantastic. And from the moment I walked into the theater to the moment I walked out, I was completely captivated by the story that was being told. I also really loved the pacing of this movie. It started off slow and mysterious and dark, and just got more and more dark and horrifying as it went along while the stakes were rising. And my mind did find some similarities between this film and Phantom of the Opera, but that could just be me. All in all, the plot was very fantastically told, and I was entranced the whole time. So for me, the plot gets a thumbs up. 2 is family friendliness. Nosferatu is very much so rated R. It has a mild bit of profanity, multiple scenes of grisly and bloody violence, and a handful of scenes involving full frontal female and male nudity, and partial sexual and non-sexual nudity throughout. One of the things I definitely forgot about vampirism in general, and specifically the story of Nosferatu, is how sensual it is, and this movie did not shy away from that. And another thing to keep in mind about this film is that Nosferatu is referenced as a demon multiple times. And so while I walked into this movie thinking, okay, it's going to be about a vampire, a lot of the elements and the way that this movie presents Nosferatu is as a demon. So if you're sensitive to that kind of thing, it's something to be aware of. But all in all, it's just a very dark film. So for me, family friendliness gets a thumbs down. 3 is acting and script. Holy free holies. The acting in this movie was top tier. You have an absolutely stellar cast of characters, and they all do very well. Lily Rose Depp was fantastic as Ellen, and her performance led this movie to be as captivating as it was. There were also good performances by Aaron Taylor Johnson, Emma Corrin, and Nicholas Hoult, and obviously fantastic performances and excellent chemistry between William Dafoe and Ralph Ineson. The scenes where they were interacting with each other were some of my favorite, and actually brought a little light sense of humor in multiple situations. Also, Count Orlok is played by Bill Skarsgård, and I had no idea, but that makes so much sense because that man is incredibly versatile. There was an acting performance in this movie that really seemed like stage acting or very over-dramatic at times, to the point where it was distracting once or twice. And that came from Simon McBurney. Don't get me wrong, the whole telling of this story is very dramatic and dark, but it seemed like his character was written in a way that came across even more dramatic than everyone else. And the script of this movie was excellent. You were hanging on every single word, every moment of dialogue, and that points to excellent storytelling and having an intelligent script that actually matters. The acting, script, and storytelling of this movie were fantastic, so for me, acting and script get a thumbs up. 4 is character development. One of the beautiful things about having such a well-told story in a movie is that you don't have to take moments out of the film to specifically develop characters. This is a very story-driven film, and so it naturally develops all of its characters along the way. Movies that do that extremely well are few and far between, but this one is one of them. And it develops them just well enough for you to understand who they are and feel like you can relate to each of the characters involved so that the story can continue. So for me, character development gets a thumbs up. 5 is visuals and CGI. The visuals in this movie were brilliant. Like your typical Robert Eggers film, they were extremely dark and extremely effective. And perhaps one of the most effective things that this movie did was make the voice of Count Orlok this very guttural, very loud, very ominous voice that just took over the screen when he was speaking. The visuals and audio of this film were excellent, and I also don't remember seeing any CGI. I know there were a lot of makeup and practical effects that went into this. There are obviously a few moments that are absolutely grotesque, but they served their purpose well and added an ambiance to this movie that allowed it to be as dark as it was. So for me, visuals and CGI get a thumbs up. And 6 is rewatchability. Nosferatu is 2 hours and 12 minutes long, and while you can definitely feel how long this film is, it didn't bother me because the story was that well told. It ramps and builds to the end of the film, and you just find yourself more horrified and more entranced the longer you go. That being said, this movie is really dark, and there are a handful of disturbing moments in it and quite a bit of nudity. So it's not a film for everyone, but I will say this about Robert Eggers' films. They are like pieces of art, and so you wouldn't want to watch it over and over and over again because that's not the way it was meant to be watched. It's meant to be watched sparingly when you want to watch a really well-made film. So because of that, for me, rewatchability gets a 50-50. With all these areas considered, I have to give Nosferatu a 7.5 out of 10. This movie was incredibly dark, dramatic, and had quite a bit of nudity in it. But it had top-level acting, incredible script, excellent storytelling, and did an excellent job telling the classical story of Nosferatu through the eyes of Robert Eggers. And this movie met and exceeded my expectations. Regardless of the content, it is one of the most well-told stories of the year. So with all that in mind, if you feel that you can handle that kind of content, Nosferatu is definitely worth going to see in theaters. Thank you so much for watching. If you've seen Nosferatu, please let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. As always, I appreciate your love and support, and I'll catch you guys and gals in the next one.